The Arizona sun bled across the desert horizon as the Saguaro Stop diner buzzed with the end of another long day. Dust rolled over the empty parking lot, clinging to cracked pavement and faded neon signs. Inside, forks clinked against chipped plates, country music hummed faintly, and tired travelers leaned into booths. Then, the door creaked open. A figure limped through, not a man, but a dog. His ribs showed under a weathered sable coat, one ear bent sharply from an old injury. This was Rex, a 10-year-old German shepherd, scarred but unbroken. He did not beg or whimper. He stood tall in silence, amber eyes sweeping the room with soldier's discipline. And then, his gaze fixed through the window, toward a tinted SUV idling under the lamp outside. He stepped forward, lifted one paw, and tapped 3 times against the linoleum floor. A silent code, a warning. At the counter, a man in his late 40s sat like a shadow in daylight. Elliot Crane, tall, broad-shouldered, blonde hair slicked neatly aside, eyes the color of steel and colder still. He wore a tailored gray suit, yet his aura screamed control, menace, calculation. A leather shoulder holster bulged faintly beneath the jacket. He didn't look at his coffee. He looked at the SUV, his jaw set as if counting the seconds. Sylvia Harris, the diner's owner, noticed the stillness of both man and dog. Something in her chest tightened. She remembered her late husband, a Marine, teaching her the one signal you never ignored. 3 taps, 3 blinks, 3 scratches. SOS. Rex was no stray. His rigid stance and burning gaze meant something was terribly wrong. Yet Elliot Crane sat unmoving, hands folded neatly, predator patience leaking into every heartbeat of the room.
Sylvia Harris, 52, carried the tired grace of someone who had weathered storms most couldn't name. Broad-hipped, with streaked gray in her long brunette hair and the creases of hardship carved deep at her eyes, she was a widow hardened by loss. She had learned long ago to measure people by silence, not words. And now, wiping crumbs from a counter older than she was, Sylvia saw what others missed. The shepherd wasn't panting, wasn't restless. He was locked in, like a soldier waiting on orders. His paws planted, tail rigid, gaze unflinching toward that vehicle outside. Through the tinted glass, a faint ripple of movement caught her eye. The SUV rocked once, almost imperceptibly, as if something or someone inside struggled against invisible chains. Sylvia swallowed hard, heart hammering against her ribs. Her hand trembled near the phone. Instinct screamed louder than reason. Something inside was alive. Rex's amber eyes did not leave the SUV. He padded closer to the door, nose brushing the glass pane, body tense as a drawn bow. Through a tiny gap in the sunshade covering the back window, Sylvia saw it. An eye, bruised, swollen, but sharp with purpose, blinked once. Then again. Then a third time. SOS. Her pulse snapped in half. The face belonged to a man, battered yet upright, duct tape binding his wrists to the seatbelt. His lips were cut, jaw shadowed in bruises, but his stare held the same desperate rhythm Rex had just carved into the diner floor. 3 blinks, the universal code. Sylvia gripped the counter for balance. She knew then the dog wasn't imagining, and neither was she. Whoever was in that SUV was alive, fighting, begging through silence, and only Rex, scarred and forgotten, had listened to his call.
Sylvia turned slightly, her apron brushing the register. Elliot Crane's gaze had shifted from the window to her, pale eyes slicing across the room. His lips twitched into the faintest trace of a smile, cold and curved like a blade. "Quiet place you're in here," he muttered, his voice slick with false charm. Be a shame if something disturbed it. He tapped his finger lightly against the counter, slow, measured, like a clock counting down. Rex growled low, chest vibrating with a restrained thunder, his body sliding between Sylvia and the man without hesitation. Conversations in the diner faltered. Spoons paused mid-air. A couple by the jukebox froze in half-turn. The air thickened, stretched tight as wire. Elliot's smile never faltered, but his hand drifted near the fold of his jacket. He wasn't a customer. He was waiting. And now, everyone knew it. Rex's growl deepened, a rumble born not of fear, but duty. His amber eyes locked on Elliot's holster, like he had seen such things before. The scar down his flank trembled as his muscles tightened. He did not bark, did not lunge. He simply stood, still as iron, daring the predator to move. Sylvia's throat went dry. She felt her late husband's presence in this moment, a whisper of training, of battle instincts she had only ever heard about. She recognized it now in a dog most would call broken. Patrons began whispering, unease rippling like static. At the far booth, Glenn Porter, a wiry old janitor in red flannel, leaned forward. His squint narrowed at the shepherd. "That dog ain't no stray," he muttered, voice low but sharp. "Seen him near sheriff's searches months back. He moves like one of theirs. Somebody left him, but he ain't done."
Sylvia turned her head just enough to catch Glenn's words. His weathered face told a lifetime of survival, his sunburned neck and wiry frame proof of days spent under Arizona's blaze. "Search and rescue," he added, his voice quaking. "Saw that same shepherd stand over wreckage once, quiet as stone, like he knew something nobody else did." Rex shifted slightly, amber eyes flashing toward Glenn as if recognizing truth. The SUV outside rattled faintly again, a muffled thud inside its belly. Sylvia's blood went cold. Elliot noticed too. He adjusted his coat, his jaw tightening, eyes narrowing toward the window. The tension pressed against every chest in the diner. The jukebox fell silent mid-song. Only Rex's growl and the faint hum of the SUV's engine filled the room. The retired janitor's whisper lingered heavy in Sylvia's mind. This wasn't just a dog. This was a soldier left behind. Sylvia's hand trembled as she reached beneath the counter, slipping her phone free with slow, measured movements. Her thumb hovered, then pressed a number she hadn't dialed in months. Sheriff Rachel Moreno answered in a clipped voice, sharp with authority. Sylvia whispered fast, her voice breaking. "Rachel, it's Sylvia. I need you here now. There's a man in a vehicle outside. He blinked SOS, and the dog saw it first." There was silence, just the faint hum of dispatch chatter on the other end. Then Rachel's voice, calm but urgent. "Hold him there, 10 minutes. Don't escalate. You hear me? Don't." Sylvia's knees weakened. 10 minutes might as well have been a lifetime. She slipped the phone back, apron hiding the glow. Rex shifted his stance, tail rigid, ears perked, his focus locked on the SUV like a compass to a hidden flame.
The diner bell chimed again, breaking the frozen moment. Doug Fenley, a broad trucker in denim with grease-stained hands, walked in, his little daughter Cassie skipping at his side. 8 years old, freckles across her cheeks, red hair tied in bouncing pigtails, pink overalls hugging her small frame. She laughed at something only children see, tugging her father's sleeve. Then she saw Rex. Her face softened, wonder in her green eyes. But the dog did not wag, did not move. Instead, Rex stepped forward, planting himself squarely between Cassie and Elliot Crane. The child paused, confusion flickering. Sylvia's throat constricted. The entire diner seemed to understand what Rex already knew. Innocence was the first thing Elliot would destroy if he could. Sylvia crouched quickly, ushering Cassie behind her legs. Rex didn't look at the girl. He stared only at the predator, body unshakable, as if swearing, "Not this one." The air inside the diner grew brittle, like a pane of glass ready to shatter. Elliot's pale fingers twitched near his coat, brushing the concealed holster with feigned absent-mindedness. His icy eyes swept the room, pausing on Cassie, then sliding back to Sylvia. Rex's chest swelled, growl rising into a sharper edge. Then, without warning, the shepherd barked. Once, a sound like a gunshot rolling through every corner of the diner. Plates rattled. Cassie screamed. A waitress dropped her tray in the back. Elliot froze, startled but controlled. The SUV outside rocked again. A shoulder, a muffled slam, desperate life fighting inside. Sylvia's heart clenched. The timing wasn't coincidence. The SOS was real. The bark was proof. In one motion, Elliot shifted. His jacket swung wide, and the glint of steel flashed under fluorescent light. The predator's weapon was no longer hidden. The standoff had begun.
The flash of the pistol under Elliot's coat froze the diner into silence. Sylvia's breath caught, her hands gripping the counter so tight her knuckles whitened. Cassie whimpered, her father clutching her close. Elliot didn't point the weapon yet. He rested it lazily on the counter, as though daring anyone to react. "Nobody moves," he said calmly, his voice as cold as glass. Rex did move, his body lowered, tail stiff, head locked on Elliot with predator stillness. He growled deep, a sound that seemed to shake the floorboards. Elliot chuckled faintly. "One old mutt against me? Don't." His arrogance rippled through the room. But Rex didn't flinch, didn't waver. His amber eyes burned with something Elliot didn't understand. A survivor's defiance, the knowledge of chains broken and wars fought. And in that unspoken language, Rex promised one thing: he would not let this man win. The SUV outside jolted violently, its frame slamming against the curb as the captive inside thrashed. Elliot's eyes flicked instinctively to the window, and in that heartbeat of distraction, Rex lunged. He launched across the floor like a bullet, teeth sinking into Elliot's sleeve, dragging his arm sideways before the gun could lift. The weapon clattered onto the tiles, spinning under a booth. Elliot shouted, his composure snapping as he struggled against the weight of the scarred shepherd. Rex's teeth clamped tighter, pulling with every ounce of battered muscle. Sylvia cried out, rushing forward, but Rex didn't need her. The dog slammed Elliot against the counter, growling like thunder itself. Patrons screamed, ducking beneath tables, plates shattering to the floor. Sylvia grabbed Cassie, pulling her behind the counter. In the chaos, the truth ripped open. This wasn't chance. Rex wasn't just any dog. He was a soldier answering a call. Elliot tore free, his expensive suit ripped, sleeve shredded, blood marking his wrist. His face twisted, no longer a mask of charm, but raw fury. "You don't know what you're in the middle of," he hissed, eyes darting toward the SUV. His voice cracked with something Sylvia recognized: fear. Rex circled, ears pinned back, growl simmering like fire under stone. Elliot lunged for the booth, reaching for the fallen gun. But Rex was faster. His scarred body slammed against Elliot's shoulder, sending the man crashing into a chair. The gun skidded further away, clinking against the jukebox. Sylvia's pulse thundered in her ears. From the corner of her eye, she saw it again. The bruised man in the SUV pounding weakly on the glass. 3 times. The code repeated. SOS. The room wasn't just a diner anymore. It was a battlefield, with Rex as its last defense. Outside, sirens began faintly to wail, growing closer, slicing through the desert night. Elliot's eyes flicked sharp, panic flaring under his cold surface. "Too late," he muttered, shoving against Rex, staggering toward the door. Rex lunged again, teeth snapping inches from his throat, forcing him back. Sylvia's heart pounded as she caught sight of flashing lights bouncing across the highway ridge. Sheriff Rachel Moreno's cruiser, followed by 2 deputies, barreled toward the lot. But Elliot wasn't cornered yet. His pale eyes darted toward Cassie, peeking from behind the counter. The smirk returned, vicious and calculating. "Maybe I don't need him," he spat, nodding toward the SUV.
Maybe I just need leverage." He lunged toward the child. Sylvia screamed, but Rex was already there, his body slamming into Elliot mid-stride, forcing him sideways onto the floor. Sirens screamed louder. Reinforcements were seconds away, but seconds could still mean death.
Snarling, Elliot rolled and seized Rex by the collar, dragging the shepherd in front of him as the diner gasped. With one hand, he pulled a smaller backup pistol from his ankle holster, pressing the barrel against Rex's neck. "One more step and this dog dies," he roared, voice cracking under the weight of chaos. Sylvia froze. Cassie muffled a sob against her father's chest. Rex stilled, not fighting, but his eyes locked on Elliot with fire, as if even in restraint he dared the man to pull the trigger. Elliot dragged him backward toward the door, using the dog as a shield. Sylvia's fingers shook around the phone in her apron. The sheriff's light splashed red and blue across the window. Elliot sneered, shoving open the door, Rex still locked in his iron grip. The desert air howled in. The battlefield had shifted outside. The SUV rattled again, desperate, alive. Rachel Moreno emerged from her cruiser, her silhouette cutting against flashing lights. 45, sharp-featured, with cropped black hair and a stance that screamed soldier long before sheriff. She raised her sidearm with calm precision. "Drop it, Crane," she barked, voice slicing through the storm of fear. Elliot shoved Rex tighter against him, gun pressed firm against the shepherd's neck. "Back off," he shouted, spittle flying. "You've got no idea what's in play here." Rachel's eyes flicked to the SUV. "I know enough," she said coldly. "Step away." Rex's body tensed, waiting, watching. He wasn't afraid. He was calculating. Behind Rachel, Deputy Nathan Kim flanked left, gun raised, while another deputy circled wide. Sylvia burst from the diner, shouting, "He's got someone in the back of that SUV! He's alive!" Elliot laughed, bitter and sharp. "Not for long," he hissed, dragging Rex closer to the vehicle like a key to his escape. The SUV's rear glass cracked under another pounding strike. Sheriff Rachel's eyes widened as she saw the bruised face more clearly now. Sergeant Troy Maddox, missing 2 weeks, wrists raw from duct tape. His lips moved frantically. "Help me!" Rachel's jaw set. "Sergeant Maddox," she shouted. "Hold on! We've got you!" Elliot snarled. "You're not taking him. He's worth more than all of you." Rex's ears flicked at the words, body quivering under the tension of the pistol pressed to his fur. His amber eyes cut sideways, catching Troy's desperate stare through the glass. And then, with a movement so subtle only Rachel saw it, Rex shifted his weight onto his hind legs. Rachel's breath caught. She knew that stance. He was about to make a choice, a soldier's choice. And this scarred old dog wasn't about to die on his knees. It happened in a heartbeat. Rex twisted with a violent snap, jaws clamping down on Elliot's wrist. The pistol fired wild, the bullet sparking harmlessly against the pavement. Elliot screamed, his grip breaking as Rex yanked free, teeth tearing into fabric and flesh. Deputy surged forward. Rachel fired a warning shot that cracked the night, forcing Elliot back. He stumbled, blood spilling, the weapon falling uselessly into the dirt. Rex didn't let go. He dragged Elliot down, forcing the man's arm flat against the ground until Deputy Kim tackled him, slamming cuffs onto his wrists. Elliot roared curses into the dust. His expensive suit ripped, his power shattered. Rex released his grip only when Rachel's voice cut firm. "Enough!" The shepherd panted heavily, fur matted with sweat, blood streaking his muzzle. But his amber eyes gleamed victorious. The soldier had chosen, and he had won. Rachel sprinted to the SUV as deputies yanked Elliot upright. She smashed the rear glass with her flashlight, shards spilling into the dirt. Rex limped forward, muzzle pressed against the opening, growling low as if urging strength into the man inside. Sergeant Troy Maddox slumped forward, his body battered, wrists raw and swollen. Sylvia rushed up, knife trembling in her grip. She cut through the duct tape, binding his arms, her hands shaking with each slice. "You're safe," she whispered, her throat tight. "You're safe now."
Troy collapsed into waiting arms, his voice no more than a rasp. "The dog! He saw me!" Rachel nodded sharply, signaling medics forward. Rex pushed his muzzle against Troy's chest just once before stepping back. His body shook with exhaustion, but his eyes shone. He had answered the call. He had pulled a soldier back from the edge. The parking lot swarmed with deputies, medics, and flashing lights. Elliot Crane was dragged to a squad car, bleeding and cursing. But all eyes turned to Rex. The battered shepherd stood still, tail low, amber eyes reflecting red and blue light. Sergeant Troy Maddox, half conscious on the stretcher, lifted a bruised hand weakly. His fingers brushed against Rex's head. The old dog leaned in, silent, steady, like a soldier receiving orders one last time. Rachel swallowed hard, her voice carrying, "That's not just a dog, that's a Marine's brother." The crowd of onlookers hushed, the desert winds stilling for a moment. Sylvia wiped tears from her cheeks, whispering, "You were never abandoned, were you?" Rex closed his eyes, chest rising with slow, heavy breaths. In silence, he had spoken louder than any man could, loyalty outlasting chains, courage outlasting fear.
The medics worked fast, stabilizing Troy Maddox as deputies hauled Elliot Crane into custody. But even with the scene under control, a chilling silence clung to the parking lot. 40 cages were pulled from the back of the compound later that night, evidence of something darker. Rachel pressed a firm hand to Sylvia's shoulder. "If that dog hadn't acted, he'd be gone," she whispered. Sylvia could only nod, her eyes locked on Rex. The old shepherd sat in the dust, panting, muzzle streaked with blood, eyes hollow with exhaustion, but still burning. He didn't bask in victory, didn't strut. He just waited for Sophie, for Troy, for the quiet affirmation that the fight was over. And when the medics loaded Troy into the ambulance, Rex limped forward, placing one paw on the stretcher's edge. The Marine lifted a weak hand in return. It was the soldier's first salute. Hours later, inside the sheriff's office, Rachel stared at the evidence laid out across the table. Elliot's forged IDs, wads of cash, lists of names. "They weren't moving just one man," she murmured. Deputy Nathan Kim nodded grimly. "This ring goes deeper than Arizona." But Rachel's eyes kept drifting to the kennel photos. Rows of cages, rusted chains, claw marks etched into steel. Her throat tightened. "This is organized slavery," she whispered, fists clenching. Through the glass, she saw Rex lying on the station floor, his scarred body stretched out, muzzle resting on his paws. Even cuffed and processed, Elliot's glare hadn't rattled her like that image did. One dog who had been thrown away, yet still found the courage to save another soldier. Rachel whispered, almost to herself, "We don't deserve them, but God, do we need them?" And for the first time in years, her eyes watered.
3 days later, Sergeant Troy Maddox took the stand in a packed courtroom. His uniform pressed, medals polished, but his voice still hoarse from the trauma. Cameras lined the benches. Reporters scribbled every word. "I was gone," he rasped, eyes locking on the jury. 2 weeks, chained, gagged, waiting to disappear. And when I thought no one saw me, that dog did. He didn't hesitate. He didn't bargain, he chose. His voice broke, just for a second. A dog saved my life, not by chance, by loyalty. He pointed toward the gallery where Rex sat beside Sylvia, ears perked, tail brushing the floor. Murmurs rippled through the room. The judge's gavel rapped for silence, but even he softened his gaze at the battered shepherd. Troy steadied himself. If you think courage wears only a uniform, you've never looked into his eyes. The silence that followed felt like reverence. When Elliot Crane was called to testify, his arrogance cracked. Bandage on his arm, wrinkled suit, his pale eyes darted with fury. His lawyer painted Rex as dangerous, an uncontrolled beast. But the video replay silenced them all. Elliot raising his gun, Rex launching, Sophie screaming in the background.
The jury watched, stone-faced, as the truth unfolded frame by frame. When asked if he regretted underestimating the dog, Elliot smirked bitterly. Regret? He leaned forward. That mutt ruined me. Rachel rose from the prosecution table, voice sharp. No, Crane, you ruined yourself. That dog revealed it. The gallery erupted in quiet applause until the judge demanded order. Rex didn't move. He simply stared at Elliot, eyes steady, unblinking, as if saying, I've faced worse men than you. And in that silence, everyone understood. Elliot Crane was already defeated.
The trial stretched for days, testimony after testimony piling against Elliot in his network. When the verdict finally came, the air in the courtroom was electric. Guilty on all counts, the judge declared. Human trafficking, conspiracy, illegal confinement. Elliot's shoulders sagged, his smirk gone, his eyes hollow. As marshals led him away, he cast one last look toward Rex. But the shepherd didn't acknowledge him. His gaze was fixed on Troy, who stood tall again, a soldier unbroken. The room erupted into murmurs, reporters racing for exits to file the story. Yet in the front row, Sophie bent low, wrapping her arms around Rex's scarred neck. "You did it," she whispered, tears soaking into his fur. And for the first time in months, Rex allowed his tail to wag. Not in play, but in something deeper. In victory, in relief. The courtroom had seen justice. He had seen redemption. Weeks later, under a sunlit sky at a modest ceremony outside the sheriff's office, Rachel pinned a small silver badge onto Rex's collar. "For valor beyond words," she said into the microphone, voice uncharacteristically shaky. Reporters snapped photos, townsfolk wiped tears, and Troy Maddox stood in full uniform beside her. The Marines saluted the dog formally. Rex blinked once, sitting straighter, as though he knew the gravity of the moment. Sylvia stood nearby, her apron traded for a neat white blouse, tears slipping freely down her face. Sophie clutched Rex's leash tightly, whispering, "That's my hero." The crowd erupted in applause. Rachel added softly, off mic, "You're proof that some warriors don't need rank to earn respect." Rex leaned forward, pressing his muzzle gently against Sophie's side. In that moment, the scars on his neck weren't reminders of pain. They were medals of survival. From the ashes of the case, something new grew. Sylvia and Rachel worked together to convert an abandoned barn into a rescue shelter. Its first residents were survivors from Elliot's compound. They called it Valor's Haven, after the tag Rachel had placed on Rex's collar. Troy visited often, offering training for the traumatized dogs, using the same patience that had rebuilt him. Sophie painted a wooden sign herself, "Home for the Forgotten." She hung it proudly over the entrance. Rex walked the aisles slowly, sniffing each kennel, nudging frightened pups with his muzzle, lying beside cages until trembling tails began to wag. He wasn't just a rescuer anymore. He was a healer, teaching broken animals that scars did not mean endings. Sylvia often whispered, watching him move among them, "He's building an army, not of soldiers, but of second chances." One evening, Troy sat with Rex under the fading Arizona sunset, metals glinting faintly against his uniform. He scratched gently behind the shepherd's ear. "They chained you once," he said softly, "but you broke them. And you broke mine too, the chains in my head." Rex leaned against his leg, closing his eyes, sighing deeply like he understood every word. Sophie ran across the yard, Buddy the puppy tumbling at her heels. She flopped beside Rex, resting her head against his back. "He's ours now," she whispered. Troy smiled faintly. "No, kiddo, he's everyone's." The shelter echoed with barks of hope, tails wagging in unison.
For Troy, the Marine who thought he'd die forgotten. And for Rex, the dog once left for dead, this wasn't coincidence. This was grace stitched together by loyalty, sacrifice, and the kind of bond nothing could sever.
Months later, at the town courthouse, a new portrait was unveiled. It wasn't of politicians or judges, but of a battered German shepherd with amber eyes, steady and proud. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "Rex, Canine, Survivor, Savior." Sophie held Sylvia's hand, her chest swelling with pride. Rachel stood silently at the back, her jaw tight, hiding the tears in her eyes. Troy spoke briefly to the crowd. Heroes aren't measured by uniforms or titles. They're measured by the lives they save when no one else will. As applause filled the chamber, Rex sat calmly in front of the portrait, tail brushing against Sophie's leg. He didn't understand speeches or plaques, but he felt the energy in the room, the love, the reverence. For once, the world wasn't calling him beast. It was calling him what he always was, a guardian. That night, under a quiet desert sky, Rex lay on the porch of the shelter. His muzzle rested on his paws, scars glinting faintly in moonlight. Inside, Sophie's laughter rang as Buddy chased his tail. Troy's voice carried low, sharing war stories with Rachel. Sylvia hummed softly while washing dishes, peace settling over her diner-turned haven. The shepherd closed his eyes, listening, his chest rising with steady, content breaths. Once, he was sold for $5, discarded as worthless. Tonight, he was priceless. His journey had torn open cages, toppled monsters, healed broken hearts. And as the desert wind whispered through the mesquite, it carried the truth. Sometimes, the bravest hero doesn't speak, doesn't boast, doesn't wear medals. Sometimes, he limps, scarred, silent, and saves the world anyway. Rex drifted into sleep, tail twitching once. He had fought his last war, and finally, he was home.